Okay, I literally just filmed 15 minutes and got cut off. So I'm just gonna sit here and talk, and the makeup will just be an afterthought. Okay, so I went to BSSM. If you don't know what BSSM is, it's a ministry school. Some people like it, some people hate it, some people think it's from the devil, some people think it's from heaven. I'm on the heaven side. I equally love and hate BSSM. I attended 2 years and currently live in the same city as where it is held. And it's actually one of the most interesting schools because it's completely 100% what you make of it. There's no way that you could have a bad year if you did it with the right heart and the right passion. I look like a ghost on your page, but it's gonna be okay. I'll fix it. So I have none of this thought out. This is kind of more of a ramble. How about I tell you my experiences. My first year was interesting. It was completely different from the second year that I went. It was very much more like high school. I didn't go to public high school, but that's what I imagine it would be like. Hanging out with friends all the time, eating crappy food, staying up all hours, going out late, all that kind of stuff. There was not very much wisdom at that time in my life. I lived with 3 other girls that were around my age, and I think I was 19 when I showed up. I turned 20 when I was here, like a month after I was here. And they were all kind of at least a year younger than me, which was my first experience with people younger than me. I had always chosen to interact with people that were at least 5 to 6 years older than me, at least. So that's like being generous. Anyway, so it was like I did not fit with them because I just didn't. So instead of like being okay with that, I tried to connect with people that were younger than me. Instead of trying to find people that I was comfortable with, I tried to make myself comfortable in their world, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It was just a different approach. I would not suggest that at all. So anyway, I lived with girls that were younger than me. First of all, I lived with all girls, which I had never lived with all females before. I grew up with, my closest sibling was my brother, and we were best pals. Like, we were inseparable for a really long time before he moved to school. And so it was just a different concept. I had a few girlfriends growing up, but it wasn't like what the typical, I feel like, girl friendships were. It was never like I liked them better than my family, or I liked them better than my brother. Like, I always chose my brother over hanging out with them. And so it was just look at that, ew, so cute. So it was just a very big learning curve, and the whole trying to like create a community thing was like just so difficult. I had a very different view on community than the rest of the people that I was trying to create a community with, because of growing up as a pastor's child and in a very close family. I felt like I knew what was supposed to be happening, and it just wasn't like what was in my head. So anyway, so it was kind of like the worst year and the best year of my life at the same time. And I feel like a lot of people would say that. I feel like a lot of people think the same way about the school. I keep saying, I'm sorry. I'm taking some blushers. So there's that. Then I had a great revival group. I had a great pastor. It was just the connecting point there was kind of off for me. And I could never figure out what it was. I didn't know if it was me or if it was the other people or if it was just that was the way it's going to be this year. And it turned out to be really great. It was an awesome revival group. And the people were great. And the pastor was great. It just took us a little bit longer than other groups to get accustomed to each other. And I think, that was a big thing, was comparing other groups to the group we had and not being content with that. But really in first year what I learned was to, how would I explain that? To be happy with who I am and not to try and change it, not to try and fit in with other people, because that's all the things that I kind of did. And I really learned how to honor my body. No one else's body can determine what I can and cannot do. Only my body can tell me. And I really, unfortunately, didn't learn that until after that year. I'm still suffering the consequences. It's been 4 years, and I'm still suffering the consequences. So there's that. I think I really learned the ease of connection doesn't determine the depth of your relationship. Because in this school, you can really dive really fast into a connective state with people, but that doesn't mean you're going to be connected with them for a long time. It doesn't mean you're going to have a deep connection. It just means, they're here right now. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It was a hard thing to learn for myself, that you're not really supposed to have everybody forever. And I mean, if you choose that, if the both of you choose to have each other forever, I'm not saying marriage, I'm saying friends, community. If you choose to be part of that community and you choose to make it a long-term situation, it has to be paired. It cannot just be ease of connection all the time, because you can't possibly connect with people easily all the time. Sometimes it's going to take effort. That's what I learned. It's like intentionality. I hate that word. But actually trying. It's going to have times of you actually trying, and it doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it takes confrontation, and I think that's a hard thing to learn too, because some people will take that confrontation and never talk to you again, which that's experientially learned. But some people will take that and be pissed at you, and then they'll be like, you know what, no one's ever loved me enough to confront me on that. So my tips for the year, any of the years, my second year, let me go to my second year, actually. My second year was completely different. I lived with my family and roommates at the same time, and I kind of went into self-protection mode, whereas before it was like let people in mode. Then it was like self-protection mode, like don't talk to me, don't breathe near me, don't look at me. So it was very much the opposite. I was like trying to be with people and love people and have community in the first year of school, and then in the second year of school, I was like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you. You know? Which was also unhealthy. Both of those things were unhealthy. But what I learned from that year is that sometimes you have to ignore what's going on around you, even if it's a move of God in someone's life. You have to ignore it to experience God for yourself. And for my experience in second year, to experience God for myself, I had to have like super rigid boundaries. Actually, they weren't, I was learning that, so they weren't super rigid then, like they should, that like they would, that, they weren't super rigid then like they were the year after I got out of school, but they were pretty rigid for what I was like the year before and what other people around me wanted from me. In my first year, I had no job, no car. I was just there for school. In my second year, I had a job that I worked 5 to 6 days a week, and I had a car and a new license. Like, I had just gotten my license, and therefore, oh my gosh, I can't breathe right now. So in that sense, I had less time. I had less time to fool around and to fill with people that were only halfway in the relationship with me. So I didn't do anything, barely. I don't think I did very much with people outside of work and my home. I was living with 7 people, I think so. So that was a big difference too. And so everywhere I went, I felt like I had to protect myself. And so that's where I was. But what I learned from that was people will still be around after you say no. And if they aren't, you can go to them and they'll still be willing. If they're not, then they probably have some stuff to work out because that offended them or whatever. And if they don't tell you, then that's their problem. I mean, you can talk to them about it and have them explain things if that's a relational depth that you're at. But for me, at that time, it was just so not a thing for me. Like, if you had a problem with me, you didn't tell me, I can't help you because you're not talking to me. So anyway, that's kind of where I was at in both of those years. I was just very pendulum. It was a very big pendulum swing, but it was good. I like, and in the midst of all that social economics of like learning how to interact with a big group, learning how to interact with people my own age for the first time in a really long while, I learned so many spiritual things that I still haven't been able to like pick up again. And that's something else I want to talk about is what happens when you get out of the school. And I would say get out of the bubble. Like, I live in the same city. I go to the same church. I work the same job that I did in second year. I know the same people. I know a lot of other people too. But like, what do you do when you get out of the school? Like, what happens to you when you get out of the school? And it's a big shift, and you do feel like I just lost everything that I learned, and I'm not going to be able to pick that back up. But eventually you do, and you pick up the things that were a big impact to you, and you have all the books still, and you can reread them and reread them and reread them. You have access to so much information. And even nowadays, Bethel streams on YouTube for free. Like, you can watch all of the sermons and learn the same stuff, even new stuff. And so I think I have a lot of tips for when you're going in and a lot of tips for when you're getting out. And I want to share those with you in future weeks. And today I was trying to do a makeup thing, but like it was not working out. And I don't know why I was kicked off, but maybe because I was supposed to share this instead of what I was sharing, which was a bunch of nothingness, basically. My gosh. I just like mascara. Anyway, the point is, if you would like a candid sit down breakdown of what I suggest happens, or what I suggest you have in mind when you come to school, and what you keep in mind while you're in school, because I think that's a big deal, is coming to school with something in mind and then you lose it with the distractions of just life in the school. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. It's basically babbling, but maybe one day it'll make sense. Thanks for tuning in.